But then he's really bought into this idea of using running as a skill to practice, to get more skillful at it, rather than to think about, I've got to build my capacity, I've got to build my VO2 max. And I think often that's the flaw in people's plans, isn't it? They want to build their engine size, but they don't have a chassis to cope with the performance that engine can produce. And also, there's loads of handbrakes on all over the place, little wheels rubbing the arch or something like that. That means you have to build your capacity more to get the same level of speed. But then you're going to break something because you got something that's rubbing or out of alignment. And it's nice that Keith's bought into that.
Yeah, it's so true. I think that's such a simple analogy that a lot of people will understand. Everyone's focused on building a bigger engine or putting a bigger engine into the machine. And yeah, it's like firing a cannon out of a canoe, as they say.
Yes, yeah, exactly that.
Yeah,
and I think that's a key for me for longevity. Longevity of performance, shall I say, and health span, is this idea that if we just carry on pushing harder, there's going to be a breaking point. And I had a perfect example of that last night. I was just chatting to a couple of parents whose kids were playing team squash, but they also play squash. And one of them said, like, how things going? It's not good. I've buggered my knee. And like, oh, what happened there? And he basically explained this process. But what it boiled down to is he'd had a game of squash, but felt he hadn't worked hard enough. So then proceeded to do half an hour of court sprint training so that he could feel like he worked hard enough. And he didn't feel anything at the time, but next day he couldn't walk. And his knee has been buggered since, essentially. And I see this a lot, is this sort of self-reward thing. We need to feel like we've done some hard work. It's this sense of achievement that's been conditioned into us, and with training and movement, it's the sense of achievement is feeling knackered at the end of it. And I need to feel like I'm knackered, and we're not playing the long game. You know, as we've talked about this, will I need recovery? Will I end up resting for 2 days? Or even worse, will I end up being injured?
I've got a very interesting parallel with a client who I coach by myself, who is currently off work and out of the gym to have quite serious surgery, and is very dedicated to training, and has in the past definitely overtrained and caused some issues. And I wonder if the surgery that she's having at the moment, at least in part, is caused by the excessive level of stress that she's put herself through.
Yeah.
So we've had this conversation, and I've said, when you're ready to start back, let's just do 2 or 3 times a week. Previously, she's been done as many as 5 or 6 times a week, with 3 times with me and 3 times with another coach at another gym.
Mm-hmm.
Very stressful job on top of this, long hours, very little time after work on a weekday basis anyway, often working weekends, calls early in the morning, calls late at night. And she said to me, I'm fine with doing the 2 or 3 days a week with you. On the days in between, I'm thinking of doing, and listed something else. And I said, I think that you really need to consider how much stress, physical stress, you're putting your body under. Bear in mind, you're coming out of surgery, and that could have been a cause of why you're having this surgery in the first place. And her answer was quite interesting, because she said, I feel like I need to do something to release all of the pent-up frustration and that I have from work. Although she loves her job, it's a high-pressure job. It's quite a stressful job. And that for me begs the question of, well, is hard exercise really the appropriate thing to be doing on a daily basis if you don't have the time to recover and you're not a professional athlete and um, you're not 16 anymore? I'll just say that. Um, so I think it requires, in this case, quite a big shift in. It could be, lifestyle as a whole. Is this job that she's doing really sustainable for her? Um, does she need a change of career? Um,
Yeah,
does she need to find other ways of like thinking about, well, why have I got all this tension? Can I manage this in a different way rather than just pounding it out at the gym?
I think an interesting analogy there because she clearly feels that need, and it makes sense because when you're in fight or flight, you start producing your adrenaline, noradrenaline, all of these, and this is all about the desire to free up energy for movement, rapid movement, to either fight or run. And an interesting example I came across was in John Ratey's Spark. Um, and what he had a client who had that, and he just said, "Have you got a space at work where you can slip away, and you can either take a skipping rope or you can just jump or something like that? You can skip, imaginary skip for a minute." Because what that allowed the person to do was to release that energy for what it was intended for, movement, and to use it. And so you didn't get that big pent up, it's the dams building, the pressure's building behind the dam until you get to the end of the day. And then you feel you need to do something. You typically go and do an hour's class or something like that. People will do these high intensity classes, etc. And it's too much. And so I think, yeah, I don't disagree with what you were saying, because this is what I've done for my life, is like typically look for something less stressful, this, that, and the other. But I do also think there are potentially shorter term strategies, if they can, I think this idea of being able to place little physical movement snacks of different varieties from a mobility perspective, having a mobility movement that you could do, but from an anger perspective, a frustration perspective, a real high level stress perspective, yeah, maybe it's a punch bag, maybe it's a skipping rope, maybe it's something like that you can go and for 30 seconds to 2 minutes or something, you can go and have a go. And you're not going to be doing so much that you hurt yourself. Obviously, with punching, you need sound technique so that you're not going to bugger your hands up. But there was allied to that skipping rope story was in New York, I think, or somewhere in America. They put massive crash mats around lampposts so people could take it out on the crash mats. And then they could walk away from it. So I wonder whether there's that type of option available for people as well, is actually follow your body. What is your body telling you? You need to vent. You need to expel physical energy. Well, let's educate people about this and give people the opportunity to be able to do that. I've been on the verge of getting a corporate contract. And this was something I was planning, was having a movement room that wasn't to go and exercise for half an hour, but was just to be able to go and do 2-3 minutes of movement and then come back.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's maybe another thing to do. The long-term plan, is this job sustainable for me long-term? But in the short term, can I find a way to mitigate what I'm feeling and still get that feeling? Because it should, I think, I don't know, when people need to shout, ah! And it's like, but it releases something, doesn't it? I lost my voice there. It gives you that release, and we typically feel better afterwards. Oh, I need some water now.
That was a good shout. Yeah, I think it is getting away from this idea of exercise being compartmentalized into this hour-long session that you do at the gym. And all the things that brings with it. You've got to get up at 5:30 to get it in before you go and do your long day at
Yeah,
work, and um, is not necessarily the ideal way of doing things. 'Cause then all of a sudden you're only getting 6 hours sleep every night all week and working
yeah,
long hours. And yeah, just integrating it into the day a bit more. I think more and more workplaces are providing some kind of facility, even if it's a basic gym with just a few bits of
yeah,
gear in there. It's a space where you're going to do some movement, and you don't
yeah,
have to, I guess, use the leg press or the chest press or whatever's in there. You can go in there and do something a little bit different, like you say, skip, um, stretch if that's what's going to help, or something a bit more dynamic if you're trying to release some energy. But
yeah,
it's just incorporating that into your day, isn't it? Which is
yeah.
something that we're really keen on.
And I think maybe one of the biggest barriers to that is self-consciousness.
Mm,
Initially, whilst it's not a culturally accepted practice, and I think maybe is that part of our wider mission, our longer term mission is to make our physical health well-being. This should be part of our life, and it shouldn't be, compartmentalized into an hour at the gym. Is that this should all be part of working practice. This should be part of our working and living environment, so that it's easy to do. Because essentially what we're doing with our one-to-one clients at the moment is helping them redesign their life, their day-to-day life, so that they can do all of these things. The standing desk, or the desk that moves up and down, so you can do both. You know, Thinking about sitting watching the TV. Well, let's sit on the floor every now and then instead of on the sofa. So we practice that getting up, getting down.
mm.
And
We'll
I
talk.
do think,
Mm,
go
carry
on,
on.
sorry.
No, carry on. Finish off your point.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's for me, that's my, my overriding mission for myself, and what I think would be really helpful for other people, because the most common thing is being healthy is hard, being healthy takes time. So how do we solve those? And to solve those, we have to change aspects of our environment, our physical environment, to allow us the opportunity. So, I moved my desk to face so that I'm looking out of the window rather than the other way. And that was just a simple change. It took, an hour to shift things around, change the furniture. But now I get much more daylight than I would have otherwise done, which has had an impact on my health and my mental well-being throughout the day. I've got a kettlebell at the end of the bed. So when I want to get up, I can do kettlebell. But I might not want to do a kettlebell. I've got a skipping rope. I can go out on the patio. Or I might just do some press-ups, sit-ups, or human garage fascia stuff, whatever. But working from home, it's nice and easy because I'm not going to have prying eyes looking at me thinking, what the hell are you doing? But if we can provide that level of awareness and education, say, well, this should be normal. Sitting
Mm.
at your desk for 8 hours is not normal. And actually, from an employer's point of view, you're going to get better quality work more consistently. People who are going to stay in the workplace more, they're not going to be sick as often because they're going to be healthier during the day, and their brain's going to be functioning better. So they're going to produce better work.
I think we can provide some examples that are from outside Western culture. So
Mm-hmm.
if you look at videos that are around of Chinese parks, lots of
Yeah,
calisthenics equipment, lots of older
yeah,
people, sometimes much older people, doing exercises that they've probably done or learned in school and can still do them. Um, and perhaps as well, an example that a lot of people will be familiar with, although they might not have thought about what the reasons behind it are. Is I think a lot of us know that the Japanese have better longevity in general than most other countries. And one of our clients mentioned this in the week, a documentary that he'd seen about it. And he said, I thought they sit on the floor all the time and they sleep on the floor. So
yeah,
and it's not just the fact they're on the floor, they have to get up and down off the floor. And
exactly.
uh, I think exposing people to some of these ideas where in other cultures it's normal to do these things, we think it's a bit unusual for adults to sit on the floor. but in other
Yes.
cultures, it's completely normal. Just exposing people to these ideas, maybe through some videos or something, might just open the door a little bit that they can start to explore it themselves.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. Because the key is it's got to be easily doable. And
Yeah.
like you say, I think there's that education. I think that's where we need to go with a lot of this, is exposing people to different ideas
Mm.
about this, looking at best practice around the world, and
Mm.
not just limiting people to our cultural view of an 8-hour office day, and then you've got to fit everything else in between.
Mm.
And let's be honest, for most people, it's not just 8 hours, is it? It's an hour of getting to work. It's your 8 hours there. It's an hour of getting back, and then you've got your sofa to sit on.
Mm.
And you might be lucky and only have an 8-hour day. My friend who's just been staying, she had a 12-hour day. So where does she fit stuff in?